Welcome back. It's been some time that we met, but today we are going to take up the next part of the last part of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in which we were examining that when Arjun is asking the question from Krishna, that who is that person who is situated in perfect consciousness? How does he behave? What are his symptoms? Kim prabhashet, which means how does he, move about speaking? How does he interact? And so on. So, in the last session, we talked about how this person, what's his bhasha, ka bhasha, but which actually means what are his symptoms. So, in 2.55, we understood about the symptoms of a person who is situated in perfect transcendental consciousness. In today's session, we are going to cover 2.56 and 57, both of which are answers to the second question that Arjun asks. Kim prabhashet, which means how does he speak? What are his mannerisms, that is. So today let's see what Krishna answers, but after the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjan Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So let's take a look at what Krishna is telling Arjun in answer to the second question. The shloka number 2.56 reads like this. Dukkheshva anudvigna manaha sukheshu vigata spriha vitarag bhaya krodhaha sthita dhir munir uchyate. How nice. Dukkheshva, which means in the threefold miseries, in the different kinds of miseries that we get in this world. Anudvigna manaha, without being agitated in mind. Sukheshu, in happiness. Vigat spriha, without being interested. That is, without being too much interested in happiness. Vita, free from. Rag, attachment. Bhay, fear. Krodh, and anger. Sthitadhi, which means whose mind is steady. Muni, a sage, a thinker. Uchyate is called. Srila Prabhupada translates this as follows. One who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. A sage of steady mind. We have all heard about this word Muni. So Srila Prabhupada begins his purport by explaining who is a Muni. Well, we generally think of a Muni as a Rishi or a kind of ascetic, a tapasvi maybe, But Srila Prabhupada explains that Muni comes from Man, which means a person who is habitual of agitating his mind, or let us say churning his mind over and over again to come up with some thoughts of his own, which means this churning of the mind that he carries out is unique to him, because everyone's mind is different. No two people have the same mind. Since everybody's mind is different, so upon churning the different minds of people, we are going to get different kinds of thoughts. So Srila Prabhupada explains that every Muni has a different angle of vision, a different way of thinking. because that's in the definition of the word Muni. And he says, unless a Muni differs from other Munis, he cannot be called a Muni in the strict sense of the word, of the term. So which means that there are innumerable Munis in the world. People, any person, who is used to churning ideas in his mind and, throwing up this idea and that idea. But that is, as we can say, just simple and pure mental speculation. Does that mean that the thoughts he comes up with are authentic and, let us say, the word of the Shastra? No, they are not. Because a Muni is a person who is bringing up his own thoughts out. So that doesn't mean that all the thoughts of the Munis are authentic and worth following. But then Srila Prabhupada says, in this shloka, Krishna is not referring to just a Muni, just another Muni. He is referring to a Sthit-dhi Muni. A Muni or a thinker or a sage with a steady mind, with a steady thinking process, or rather, a Muni or a sage or a thinker who has perfected the churning of his mind to come to the perfect conclusion. And what's that perfect conclusion? That perfect conclusion is what is in harmony with what is being said in the Shastras. So whatever is there in the Shastras, if a person has come to a conclusion after churning his mind that resonates with the conclusion of the Shastras, then he can be called a sage of steady mind, Sthit Dhi Muni. And what is the conclusion of the Shastras? The conclusion of all the Vedic Shastras, be it the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, the histories, that is the Itihasas like Ramayana and Mahabharata, is that Krishna is the supreme person. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. I am a soul and I am there to serve Krishna, because in serving Krishna I find my completion. That is the conclusion of all the Shastras. So if a person has been thinking and thinking and thinking and then finally comes to this conclusion, as will be actually quoted in the Bhagavad Gita also in the further chapters, that a person who has come to the conclusion that Vasudeva Sarvam Iti, which means Vasudeva Krishna is the be all and end all of everything, that is a person who is a great soul, a sage of steady mind. You see, Krishna also says that then actually Srila Prabhupada further in his purpose goes on to explain the first three parts of the shloka after explaining who is a Muni and who is a Sthit-dhi Muni. So Srila Prabhupada explains that such a person who is a stage of steady mind, he actually goes through whatever situation is thrown at him, by this world, in a very steady manner, without being disturbed at all. Which means, if the threefold miseries come, why these threefold miseries, I think we discussed them before. Let's revise them a little bit. In Hindi or Sanskrit, we call them the Tritap. Tritap means the three types of miseries inflicted on the living beings in this world. These three types of miseries are symbolified by the trident of Durga, the Trishul of Durga. The three prongs that we see in the Trishul of Durga are actually symbolizing the threefold miseries inflicted on the living beings in this world. And what are the three miseries? We have the Adi Daivik Dukh, the Adi Daivik Dukh, which means the Dukh or the miseries inflicted by the demigods. Like whenever we get cyclones and all. Well, you might be thinking, how old-fashioned am I talking, It was only in the earlier times people used to think that if there is a flood or there is a drought, the devatas must be angry. But that's not the old, okay, this could be the old. Yes, it is old, because this is the view and this is the opinion of the Shastras, and the Shastras are the oldest thing in this world. The Vedas have been spoken by Krishna himself. So this is going to be explained how the devatas can be angry when the things do not go about in the right way on this earth in the third chapter. In the third chapter, the interdependence of the demigods of the devatas and the jivas on this earth has been explained very, very beautifully in detail. We'll come to that explanation later. But for now, please understand, let's understand that indeed the demigods are there, like the I would say in charges of the different department, like energy, like water, like air. And if they are not dealt with in the proper manner, they may get annoyed and inflict miseries on us. So that is the Adi Daivik Dukh. Then we have the Adi Bhautik Dukh, which means the miseries inflicted upon us by other living people. You're going out somewhere, or you get up in the morning in a very good mood, and suddenly you get into a quarrel with your spouse, or maybe your boss, sorts of vents out his anger on you. Your whole mood is spoilt. Or a mosquito comes to bite you and gives you malaria. Well, these are all miseries inflicted upon us by the other living entities in this world. Adi Bhautik Dukh. And the third, Adhyatmik Dukh, which means the Atma, which means the Dukh or the miseries which come out from our own insides, our own minds. For instance, there are certain diseases which nobody is inflicting on us from outside, but which originate within our own mind, particularly the mental disorders. So the depressions, the different kinds of obsessive disorders. We have a whole spectrum of mental disorders now, right? And we see that all these disorders are coming out only from the person's inside. The circumstances are not really that much to blame. So these are Adhyatmik Dukh. So a person who is maintaining his calm in all types of miseries inflicted, or is also behaving equanimously when happiness comes his way. He's not too much interested in rejoicing when happiness comes. A very interesting video I was reading, which I could correlate with this, with what is being said in this shloka. And that tells you how relevant Bhagavad Gita is even today. There is an American psychiatrist called Dr. Anna Lemke. She has written a book called The Dopamine Nation. She talks about the various types of mental disorders. And what she says, she actually concludes a lot of important facts, of which some very important conclusions are that generally dopamine is a hormone that gives us a feel-good factor. It gives us a high. We're always craving for some kind of high, some kind of enjoyment from watching a movie or eating some good food, something like that, But she explains that if you have a high, you're also going to have a low, because both the highs and the lows are actually centered in the same part of the brain. So just let's try to understand that if we are actually constantly seeking the pleasures or the highs in our life, then we have to be certain that we are going to face a relevant low. We have heard this, people, even our elders saying this, "Zyada nahi haso, warna rona padega." So that's not a hearsay. That's indeed true. That's been proved by science, and that's also what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita. That maintain an equanimous situation, maintain an equanimous inner environment, whether you are faced with miseries or with pleasures. So this psychiatrist, Dr. Anna Lemke, is also explaining that don't constantly always seek pleasures and don't always avoid pains. Rather, try to take them both equanimously, because these are all temporary things. As this world is full of dualities, this is what Krishna is going to tell in the next shloka, that there is going to be up and down, up and down, up and down in this world, because the nature of this world is that it is made of dualities. If there is day, there is going to be night. If there is pleasure, there is going to be pain. So you see, rather than swinging all the time on the seesaw of pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain, or a pendulum, which always seeks going to the extreme positions. It's better to maintain a constant inner environment, because that gives you a situation of balance, and that gives you a real bliss from inside rather than the pleasure and pains of this world. See how relevant Bhagavad Gita is even today, even for our mental health. See, this, in fact, science is coming to the same conclusions as given in our Shastras, like Bhagavad Gita. So then Srila Prabhupada explains that this kind of a person, how does he maintain? So it's easy to say, maintain an equanimous situation. And the psychiatrists and the doctors can say that, be equal, be the same in all the situations, then you will maintain a balance, a mental balance. But of course, they might give you some tips, some practical tips. But Krishna is giving us the root of this solution, how really to maintain the balance. He says, Srila Prabhupada is explaining, not really from this shloka, but from another shloka in Srimad Bhagavatam, that whenever pains come your way, whenever miseries come your way, such a person needs to think that these are nothing but the reactions of my own karma from the past. So no big deal. I just have to go through this with equanimity, and this is going to go away. And when pleasures come your way, what do you think? You give the credit to God. That God is so kind to me. He's giving me all this pleasure. We often have this opposite habit. Whenever we get something bad, we blame others. When we get something good, we give ourselves credit. Krishna says we need to do just the opposite and then see how equanimous we can be. Tell yourself, we have to, and that's true. It's not just telling ourselves. It's true that whatever bad comes our way is actually because of our own bad karma. There's nobody in this world that we can blame, who we can blame this for, And whenever we are in a good situation, then just think that it is all the mercy of Lord. And although we can thank the Lord for giving us this particular pleasure, let's not get too high on it, because too high also is going to translate into a new low. So a person who is in such a situation, such a frame of mind, is always daring and active and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. As in the shloka, Krishna says that a person is free of attachments, fear and anger. This person doesn't get angry at the things that he faces in the world. He's not fearful of any situation. He's not attached, nor has an aversion to anything in this world, because he understands that everything in this world is to be used for the service of Krishna. If a person is attached to something for his own sense of enjoyment, then we can say that the person is attached to it. But if a person is just using something for Krishna's service, but not for his own sense of enjoyment, we can say that the person is not attached to that thing, So Srila Prabhupada concludes this purport by saying that a person who is fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. So he is not even angry if his attempts at doing something fail. If we meet with failure, how angry we feel about it. I put in so much effort in this, and what if I got? See, only failure. But a person who is a sthitadhi muni, a sage of steady mind, is never angry, because he knows that whatever results I'm getting is actually because Krishna is giving me so because of a certain reason. My job is to do the efforts. It's Krishna's job to see what the results are going to be. So such a person, whether he gets success, as Srila Prabhupada says, or no success, he is always steady in his determination to move about in this world as per Krishna's instructions. So that is a sage of steady mind. And then in 57, the same thing is being answered, that such a person with steady intelligence, perfected consciousness, what does he do? Yah sarvatranabhisnehastat tat prapya shubha shubham nabhinandati nadveshti tasya pragya pratishtita. So here Krishna is using the term pragya pratishtita, which means pragya, which means knowledge or intelligence, which is pratishthit, which means fixed. So a person whose knowledge is fixed or perfected, what does he do? In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. He is the person with the perfected consciousness. So this is the second part of the answer, part B of the answer of the second question of Arjun. Kim prabhashet. How does he move about? So such a person, he is so perfected in his knowledge that whether he gets auspicious things, whether he gets inauspicious things in this world, in this material world, he doesn't care. He neither praises an auspicious condition nor despises an inauspicious condition. Now Srila Prabhupada explains this beautifully, that there is always going to be some upheaval in this world, because this world, the nature of this world is like that. Sometimes there is going to be good, sometimes there is going to be evil, dualities, as we just saw. This material world is a world of dualities, up, down, day, night, fear, happiness, misery, happiness. But there is one world, the spiritual world, where there is no such duality. There is always eternal bliss there. Every song, every word is a song, every step is a dance. There is no concept of time. There is no concept of past and future. There is only present. But here we see it's a world of duality. It's a temporary. Our existence is temporary. This world is temporary. And it's a world full of dualities. So we cannot expect everything to remain status quo, or which means just as it is all the time. So Krishna has told us that as long as one is in this material world, there is always the possibility of good and evil, because this world is full of duality. But one who is affected or firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by this good and evil, because he is simply concerned with Krishna. And who is Krishna? The supreme spiritual person. And the spiritual world, the spiritual person, even our spiritual identity, Atma, is not affected by the dualities of material world. And that's what we need to attain, the realization of our spiritual self, our real identity as an Atma, as an eternal servitor to Krishna, so that we can remain unaffected by the dualities of good and evil. So this position, when one reaches this position, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that then a person is said to be in Samadhi. So Samadhi is not really somebody sitting in this posture of Padmasana with eyes closed and doesn't understand what's going on around. A person can be in Samadhi with open eyes. A person can be in Samadhi moving about in this world. He can be in Samadhi if his mind is always fixed in Krishna and his service, because then he is truly not affected by all the ups and downs of this life, and he no longer keeps swinging on the sweet seesaw of good and evil, pleasure and pain. So that is the person who is fixed in intelligence. So with that beautiful 2 shlokas, we are ending today's session. We'll see how Krishna answers the third question, which means Kim asit? How does such a person sit? Which actually means how does he regulate his senses? We'll see you next time. Please chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and be happy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.